Welcome to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. I'm your host, Marley Freygang, and I'm here to help you filter out all the bullshit and become the next It Girl. This podcast explores the reality of what it really takes to make it out there. As it turns out, it is way less Instagrammable than I thought it was going to be. I'm still very much a work in progress, but there's simply nothing else I'd rather be doing than chasing my dreams. So let's learn from my mistakes and work together to achieve our dreams with more confidence, clarity, and direction. Let's get after it.
Hi.
Influencer, fellow podcaster, and the host of Order and Chaos. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I, in so many ways, don't know how to start with you in the best way possible. Like, not in a bad way.
No, I feel that.
But, you know, you're a podcaster, influence girly, went through this insanely traumatic accident in your 20s that you're super open about. Microdosing, ayahuasca, wellness, you know, freezing your eggs.
Oh
like,
my gosh,
where do we start? Like,
that's a good question. I feel like I feel the same way about myself where I'm like, I never know where to start. Like when people ask me like, okay, like give yourself like a little pitch or whatever, I'm like, I don't know where to start even. So I feel you on that. I don't know. I feel like for me, my journey has just been, because I'm about to hit 30. So I have had my 20s and it's been a very crazy decade, but I feel like that's what your 20s is just trying out different things, like learning as much about yourself as you can, and then kind of like figuring it out, what works, what doesn't, and you're just like constantly growing and evolving. And so I feel like that's been my journey the last couple of years. And so it's been a little bit of everything until now I'm here. And I'm hoping my 30s will be a little bit more chill.
We all dream, but I really dream for you that your 30s is a little more chill.
Yeah. Where do you want to start?
Well, I mean, I kind of can't resist but starting with like, so you have something and you call it a rebirth.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell the audience what happened and how this dramatically changed your life?
So I guess now it's been 6 years. So 6 years ago when I was living in Ohio, I was walking to work one morning and basically as I was crossing the street, there was a bus turning and she just didn't see me and basically hit me from my right side and it pulled me underneath. And so I was dragged underneath the bus for a little bit. And then once it stopped, I was, you know, at that point, people had seen it happen, called, and I was just rushed to the hospital and went into emergency surgery. And so my rebirth day is what I call the day of my accident. And so for me, I experienced something called anniversary effect. And basically when it comes to that time of year of my accident, like when it gets close to that date, it just triggers like more emotions in me, like the weeks leading up, even like the days after. And so in the earlier part of this like recovery, when it was still kind of fresher, and I was like dealing with PTSD and all that stuff, like it was a really hard time for me. And so I wanted a way to kind of like celebrate it almost and have that day be something a little bit more, I don't know, like have like a happier thought around it. And so it became like my rebirth day and kind of like my second chance at life, and a day that just like completely changed my perspective and who I was. And so I kind of just call it my rebirth day, September 8th.
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm so sorry you had to go through this, and I can't imagine what you've been through, but you went through not only a physical recovery and a mental recovery. Like, how long did just the physical journey take you?
So the main two injuries that I had were a spinal fusion. So I had fractures in my spine, and then my pelvis was also shattered. And so with the spinal fusion, I got really lucky, or with the spinal fractures, I got really lucky because they didn't hit my spinal cord. Obviously, if it had hit my spinal cord, I would have been paralyzed. And so I think that was like another thing for me that I just always think back on, like how lucky I am that I still am able to walk every single day. I'm able to do all these things. So I feel like it's really made me appreciative of what I have now. And so that's like another thing that mentally I feel like I kind of had to come to terms with, is like, yes, I'm really grateful, but it's still kind of like that hard, like emotional gratitude that I have for it. Yeah. But so because of those injuries, I was non-weight bearing for a while it was healing. So I was in a wheelchair. I was in the hospital for a month, and then I was in a wheelchair after that for a couple months, just until I was able to kind of like put weight on myself again. And so during that time, I was just in like PT. I wasn't working or anything like that. I was just doing PT not every single day. It was probably like 2 or 3 times a week. And then basically I would say like the full process of the recovery physically was like, until I was like really good, was a year or so. And then I had a second surgery and kind of had to like repeat the PT process again. So it was like 2 years where I really felt like I was like in the thick of it, and I was kind of like more in like survival mode and just kind of getting through day by day. And I think during that time when I was so focused on the physical recovery, it didn't, especially when I was like in the hospital and like doing that whole part of it, I was on so much medication that I wasn't fully mentally, I wasn't really aware of like how I was feeling mentally yet. And so that part didn't hit me until a little bit later on. And so I feel like the mental part of it was definitely a struggle while I was like in the hospital and recovering then, but it definitely hit me harder later on after the physical part was kind of, I got under control. And so I feel like with PTSD, it's just been an ongoing kind of mental battle of managing it and figuring out like what works for me, how am I going to get through this, and just, a whole different.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like it's so easy to obviously track for us to all see a physical recovery, but seeing a mental recovery, like, yes, you can tell when someone's, feeling a higher energy or whatnot, but like you can't quite put your finger on it in the same way.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And also, going through that amount of time, like I can only imagine like what you felt like you were suppressing because you're just trying to like, get through the PT and work through.
Yeah. And I just remember, I was very optimistic during that time, but when other people were like acknowledging that, it almost, and they were like, you're so positive, blah, 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 it almost felt like I had a little bit more pressure to have like kind of a happy face on.
Yeah.
When I wasn't always feeling that way, or like when I would have these times where I was feeling really down, like I never wanted to like show that because I was like, well, everyone thinks I'm like so positive right now, and they're like so proud of how like optimistic I'm being. And so it's like, okay, if I want to be depressed or this, like I don't want to like show that side. I want to just like get through it. So like when I hear of other people who are either going through any type of like, whether it's even like illness, like cancer or something, and they're struggling through that, or it's an injury, whatever, I just like know like it's, even when I see them putting on like that positive optimistic thing, I'm like, it's gonna hit them later. Like how fucking hard this is down the road when they're like still thinking about it, but everyone else is kind of like moved on, and they're like, oh, you're good now, like whatever. But it's like, no, not really.
No, not really.
Yeah.
You don't get to see all the tracks. Do you feel like this is kind of what, were you like a wellness girly before?
It's funny because I was always very active. I was always like good about working out. I worked at a yoga studio, so I was always in the realm of like being passionate about being active in fitness and wellness, but not to the level that I am now. I think for me, during that recovery, I got a lot more spiritual. And so I think I needed something else to like kind of believe in almost, and like give me a sense of hope. And so I kind of started exploring, just different things like Reiki and energy healing and manifestation and mindset and meditation. All those things kind of came to me during that recovery. I wasn't really as into that stuff, and I don't think it was as popular back then either. But I think that side of my wellness journey came definitely after the accident.
Right. And like, if we can talk about it, because I'm very
Open book.
curious to hear like why and when did microdosing cross your idea?
I've always been very open about like psychedelics and experimenting. Like I've always been into that stuff, and like, had a curiosity for it in general. Microdosing is obviously like a newer thing that's coming around. So my accident was 6 years ago. I remember hearing about ayahuasca first, and I think it was 2 years after my accident, I decided I wanted to go do ayahuasca. So I went to Peru by myself to do.
By yourself?
Yeah. It was
you
like
didn't go with anyone?
No, I literally went alone because I think it was my 26th birthday or my 25th birthday, one of those.
You're badass.
And I was like, I had seen, I think it was Chelsea Handler had done like a special on it. Yes.
The Chelsea does, and it's Chelsea does drugs.
And so, yes. And so I was like researching ayahuasca, and especially with like PTSD and trauma. And I'm like, and at this point I was like, I need something. Like I need something else. The pain meds, I was trying to get off of all the pain meds. I wasn't really taking medication. I wasn't really into it. It wasn't working. And so I was like, I need to try something else. And so I was kind of like desperate to try anything. And so I was like, all right, guess I'm going to Peru and we're doing ayahuasca. And that was extremely like healing, and just showed me how it can like change your mindset and see things in a different perspective. And so that obviously opened up a new curiosity to like what else is out there kind of. So I've always just been open to it. And then more recently, when I moved to LA, probably like almost 2 years ago, I heard people were doing mushrooms, but in like a microdosing way. But it was still more of like a party kind of thing.
For sure.
Like it was like the chocolates that people were taking, and they were doing it instead of
Coachella.
drinking. Yeah, like it was still like very much so fun thing. And then I kind of started hearing about people doing it for PTSD. And so I started doing more research and then kind of getting into like, once I like get an idea in my head, I'm like, I have to try it. Like, I'm just going to see what it's like. And so I found this one company that had capsules. So I ordered their capsules and then I just started doing like, I was very consistent with it for the first couple months where I was, you know, had a schedule where I was on 3 days, off a few days, kind of just trying that out for a little bit. And at this point, my mental health was like not good. Like I was like, the PTSD was really getting to me and I was like, I can't have these thoughts every single day. Like I don't know how I'm going to live the rest of my life like this. It was just, it seemed unbearable at that point. And so I was like, I'm going to try microdosing. And I don't think it's for everyone. I don't think everyone needs to try it, but like someone who for me is very open to that stuff and has an like, also I'll say that some people have like bad trips or whatnot when they do any type of psychedelics. In my mind, I don't really like think that I have bad trips, even if it is maybe like a not as pleasant experience, because I just look at it as like, okay, this is opening my eyes to something else. Mm-hmm. So I've always had like a very like good mindset around that stuff. So I wasn't really like afraid to take, you know, try this or whatever. I don't think it's for everyone though. But anyway, so I started doing that consistently for a couple months. And then I just like noticed like a shift in my mood and my mindset and just how I was feeling. And I felt like lighter. And I was like, okay, I can kind of like get through my days a little bit better. And so it just kind of helped. I mean, there's so much science part to it that I don't fully cannot explain that well.
We can't even digest that.
Yeah. And I had the founder of it come on and he kind of explained it on my podcast, but just the way that it kind of can help rewire and rewrite your neural pathways and whatnot. And I think that's what I needed for my brain to kind of like reset almost and have like new thought processes be created and kind of get me out of this like negative thought loop that I was in. So I did that for a while, and then I kind of took, once I felt like in a better place, I kind of eased up on the my like dosing schedule and whatnot, and now I kind of am a little bit more flexible on it, but it's kind of like whatever works for you type thing. But that was just like the one thing that was like really beneficial for me when it came to just trying to like manage my thoughts and my mindset a little bit better in a way that I felt like I wasn't really able to in any other capacity.
So I'm so curious because I've been really curious about microdosing. I'm maybe starting to like consider doing it myself. Like, how long did it take for you to feel like you notice? Like, can you go to work? Like, what's the range?
Okay, so for me personally, I would take 200 milligrams, 100 to 200 milligrams at the beginning, and I always like I noticed it a little bit, but it wasn't like something where I was like, oh, I can't work, I can't do this. Yeah. But it can affect everyone differently. So it kind of just depends on the person.
So try it at home first.
Yeah. I feel like I've gotten so many people like wanting to try it. I'm like, okay, be careful. I don't want to like.
Yeah, no, it's so important to know everyone's different. Yeah.
And like do your research, like make sure it works for you, whatever. But I think it was like the 2-month mark is when I was like, okay, like I feel like I can get through my days a little bit better. But I will also say that I was doing other things too to help. Like I had stopped drinking as much. I think at that point, actually, I wasn't drinking at all.
Wow.
And then I was also like very like getting back into meditation. I was doing like other things too that, you know, those things alone could be helpful for someone where maybe you don't need to take psilocybin to do that too. But I was doing a combination of things that I felt like I was just trying to change my old habits and like I had spent most of my life like partying and drinking. And so I was like, okay, this isn't working for me anymore. Like I need to try and do something different. Otherwise I'm just going to keep, you know, having the same cycle. And so once I started changing really changing my lifestyle, I felt like that was like part of it too. Yeah. So it was definitely the mushrooms, but there was other stuff going on too.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going back to the ayahuasca because I'm also so curious about this. I mean, I don't know if I can handle it if we're being completely honest.
I definitely don't think ayahuasca is for everyone.
Yeah, I definitely don't think ayahuasca is for everyone, and I might be in that category.
Yeah, I mean, it was an intense experience.
Did you have to go on the diet before?
Yes.
What did that entail?
So I think they say 2 weeks. The one I was on, they said 2 weeks. I don't know if that's how it is for everyone, but it's no alcohol. I think it's like reducing your sugar. It's like a very clean diet when it comes to food. I want to say like it was like I don't think it was completely vegetarian, but it was like definitely like limited on meats and like especially the day of like you can't really have anything. And then like no sex, no marijuana, no medications, nothing. So I kind of like, and that was like I think the last time I had taken any of my like anti-anxiety, like that type of medication. That was like, I was like, okay, I'm going to go off of it for this. And then I just never really got back on it. So yeah, you have to do like a 2-week diet at least. And then the day of it's pretty strict too. But yeah, I mean, it's like an intense process. And also
Yeah.
like, I'm someone who's fine traveling alone. Like I enjoy doing solo travel, but if like, it's just like for me to have to go to Peru to do it. I'm sure there's places in LA that people do it.
I'm sure.
And you can find it wherever, like more locally, but I just don't think it's super accessible to everyone. So that's why I'm like, it was definitely like a trek and like a journey to get there.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I agree maybe that because I'm speaking from my own experience, like from what I know about it, I'm like, I don't think I can do it. And if I have that feeling, it means it's not for me.
Yeah.
Like,
and like you
fine.
really are like losing your mind a little bit. So it's just like a very intense experience that, you know, and also I really think like even when I went to the place that I went to, you had to fill out a form that was like, what's your purpose for coming? Like, why do you want to do this? And like having like an intention behind it besides like, you know, if there is like something that you're working through, like trauma, whatever. So I think it's definitely something you have to be intentional and mindful of when you're doing any type of, you know, psychedelics.
Right. I really love what you said about, you know, all these psychedelics and all these things, like they are complementary to a routine. Like it isn't I did this one thing and it fixed everything.
Right.
It's a whole lifestyle.
Definitely.
And a whole thing. And do you feel that like this has helped you support like what you do as a career and influencing as well?
I think it gave me a little bit more structure and purpose and like kind of helped me even just like staying in and like actually like getting things done and not getting distracted with like wanting to go out or having FOMO or like needing to be at certain places and stuff. Like just being like, oh, well, I'm not really drinking right now, so I'm not going to go out. And then that would like bring me to have more time to work on these passion projects or these side projects that I was doing that I had kind of like put off and whatnot. So I feel like in that sense, yeah, just overall like helping me kind of grow up, to be honest. Like, I mean,
the grow up.
I don't know how old you are.
I'm about to be 28.
Okay,
so like
I'm 29,
older,
about to be 30.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm older.
You're in that.
I'm older 20s as well.
Yeah.
You know, which that being said, you know, I kind of wanted to talk about not a lot of 20-year-olds. Well, actually, that's a generalization. Not a lot of 20-year-olds maybe go through what you went through.
Yeah.
And you know, you've openly talked about how, you know, your 20s was a little bit different due to the accident. Like, you know, how did you build this like mindset of appreciating every phase of life? I know,
because I think there's times where I will be like, I feel like I got robbed in my 20s, where it's like, because so much of my 20s were spent on my recovery, like my 23 to 25, I was processing that. And like when I was going through that, all my friends were going out and having fun and traveling and stuff. And so then when I was able to finally do that stuff again, they were all kind of like starting to have serious relationships and settling down and everything. And I was like, wait a minute, like I haven't lived that part of my life yet. I want to go do that. So I kind of feel like my timeline has always been off from everyone else's. I don't think that's just me. I think so many people go through that. And to realize that you're on your own path and you can't compare yourself to what everyone else is doing because not everyone's gone through what you've gone through or whatever your case may be. But it's like you have to just go on your own like timeline and get rid of this whole thing that society makes us feel like we have to be at a certain place in our life at these like age benchmarks. And so I think just being able to let go of that, because I struggled with that a little bit where I was like, I feel like I'm behind. And then I was like, no, you're not. You went through something so crazy that no one else has, like, you can't compare your story to anyone else's because they haven't dealt with that. And I think even with the pandemic, people have felt that way too, where, you know, if you were in your early 20s or mid 20s during that time, like that was still 2 years of people's lives that they felt like were put on pause. And then like you come out of it and you're, you know, you went into it at 23 and you come out of it 25, 26. You're like, wait a minute, like what just happened those 2 years where I couldn't do anything? And so I feel like other people kind of felt that way too with just even having the pandemic happen.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting because like if we're like looking at what we say the benchmarks of timelines are, I've hit them. And I don't feel any better about leaving my 20s. And so it's like, you know, I'm 28, I'm engaged. I, you know, been with my partner. I've built somewhat of a career. Maybe that's where I feel the most insecure.
I know.
And it just doesn't matter.
No.
Like you could do everything right. You could go party and then find the love of your life. And you're still going to feel a little incomplacent and think about maybe if your life had been different and whatnot. There's like so not one way. And like that really stood out to me about your story because I was like, I feel that way. Yeah. It's like it's such bullshit that we put on each other, like to be like, this is the timeline. Yeah. You should follow it.
And I feel like even with phases and like stages of life, being able to like appreciate every single one of them. So like, for example, if you're in a relationship, being able to like actually appreciate that and have fun and, you know, do all the cute coupley stuff. But then like, let's say you end up single or you are single, like, okay, that's still a really fun, like exciting time that you should be enjoying because you don't know if you're going to get that time again. So it's like you just have to learn to love whatever place you're at. And I know it's sometimes harder to do and it's easier said than done, but it's just one of those things where it's like once you can appreciate where you're at, life will become a little bit easier.
Yeah, like why do we make it so much harder for ourselves?
I know.
Like we literally like add a weight to the ankle of dragging ourselves by judging ourselves for not being where we thought.
I think it's partially the social media and comparison stuff. Like you just see what everyone else is doing all the time, so you're like, fuck, I'm not doing enough, or I need to do more. They're doing this and they're at this place in their life, and it's just like you gotta like somehow turn that off and like be a little bit blind to it.
Let me fucking tell you, that kind of shit fucks me up so bad.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's a huge part of why I started this podcast is like I felt that I was that girl. Like I would sit and scroll, and sometimes I still do. For a second there, maybe pretended to the podcast audience that like I had it. I was so over. I call it the compare and despair scroll.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. In the past like 3 to 4 months, I've had a huge regression in the compare despair scroll.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right there. It's right there in your life.
Yeah, it's addicting.
It's addicting, and it's made to be addicting and whatnot. And it's so easy to look at, what you think your life should look like and be like, wait, I don't have those things.
Right.
And I will say it's a really humbling experience trying to have a platform, whatnot.
Yep.
You make the same video that somebody else's makes, and yours gets half the likes and half the views.
Yeah.
Whew.
And then you start to like question your worth and what am I doing? Like it's a rabbit hole that you go down and you just get so hard and down on yourself, and then you have to like pull yourself out of that. And so I have gotten to the point where I'm pretty good about, at least for Instagram, I don't scroll a ton. I kind of post what I need to post and then I get off. I try not to watch people's stories. I mute a lot of people.
We live for that.
Yeah. I'm a fan of muting, and it's like, yeah, I'll unfollow people that I'm like, you know what? This is just making me question myself. I'm like, if I don't, and it has nothing to do with the person, it has to do with me. Like, if I feel like insecure for some reason, I need to unfollow, I need to like mute, whatever. And then TikTok is the one that I can't stop scrolling. It's addicting.
Nonstop. And we're like, why?
But it doesn't make me feel as bad. My For You page has gotten to a point where it's like things I think I actually do like seeing for the most part. There's every now and then I'm like, oh, fuck. But for the most part, I think I can handle that one.
I feel like my TikTok is so aware of what I'm insecure of. And it will continually push that to me. And I'm like, motherfucker, you need to stop.
Yeah, sometimes it will give me some hard truths that I don't want to face, like especially relationship stuff. I'm like, okay, did not need to hear that today. But thank you. And I know that, but I'm going to stay delusional here.
Right. I'm like, I don't want to hear that right now. Seeing we're talking about like content and, consuming content, you've been this you call yourself a micro influencer.
I don't even know what is a micro influencer. I feel like if anything, I relate more to the term like content creator because I think I have just gotten to a place where I've done like video editing and I'll do UGC and stuff, and I've done it for brands. On both like the brand side and like influencer side. So I don't know. I feel like content creation is like a term. I'm like, okay, I can get behind that. Like I can create content. I feel like that is something that I am like, I can do that. Whereas like micro influencer or like influencer in general, I'm like, I don't feel like imposter syndrome comes in when I hear the word influencer. I'm like, no, that's not me. But I'm like content creation, I can do that.
Like I make content.
Yeah. Like I'm like that I can do.
Did you have a normal, you were walking to work.
Yes,
so
I did. It's so funny because I went to school for communications. I always wanted to be in like some type of editorial, print, marketing. At the time, like social media wasn't as big of a thing. I graduated in 2016. So back then, like Instagram was kind of, a thing, but it wasn't used for business.
But it is now.
Yeah. There wasn't like stories until later on. Like all of that was definitely newer. It wasn't even like carousel. So like digital marketing was different. It wasn't social media marketing at the time yet. And so I went to school for communications. Afterwards, I was just never someone who was like driven in the sense of like, I had good internships, but I was never like, oh, I need to have this internship so I can get here. Like I wasn't focused on that. I was kind of just like having fun. Like I really just was having fun in college. And then so after college, when I graduated, I didn't really have like a job that I like loved. I kind of just took like a random ass job that was really shitty. And I was like, this is miserable. And then finally I found another job that still wasn't in the realm of what I wanted to do, but it was a really, really good company. And it was healthcare tech though. And so it had nothing to do with anything that I was really passionate about. But I was like, you know what? It's a really like good place to work. I like the people. It's young, very like hip and like the benefits were great. So I was like, I'll just do this. And so I was very content. I had been there for like 6 months and then my accident happened. And they were really, really good with the whole situation. So I'm very, very grateful for them. And I technically at the time, I don't think was even considered to be working there long enough to get like the benefits that you're supposed to get or whatever. And they still gave it to me. So I had like, I think it was like 8 months where I wasn't working, but I was still being paid under, I think it was long-term or short-term disability, one of those. And so the first couple weeks I was like, okay, I'm just going to do my PT and whatever. And then I started getting really fucking bored. I was like, I'm losing my mind here. Sure. And I was also in a wheelchair at this point. So like, and my mom was living with me. It was like, really, I was just in my apartment. I would maybe go down, you know, to the lobby and go to the gym for a little bit and like do my like little armband workouts there. And then I would come back up. It was nothing crazy. And I was getting so bored. And so I started listening to the Skinny Confidential podcast. Like every single day, I was like just listening to her and learning about branding and social media. And I was always kind of interested. Like I always had like a creative side to me when it came to like photography and taking pictures. I was always the girl who had a camera out, like documenting everything. Like I always liked that stuff, but I don't know. I just never like explored the idea of like being on social media in that way. And then hearing her talk about it and just where the direction of where it was going, I was like, okay, this makes sense. I think everyone is going to eventually have to have like a personal brand and every business is going to need to be on social media. So I just learned as much as I could about social media marketing at the time, just through like YouTube and Google and, you know, whatever podcast I could hear about it.
YouTube Academy.
Yeah. Literally like just that was like basically where I learned it all. And then eventually I started doing it for myself because I was like, well, I have no portfolio or like work to show for anything. So I'll just like try and do it on myself. And then that can be kind of what I show brands or businesses that I want to work for. So I could get a job in their marketing team or something. And so I was doing that while I was recovering and just kind of like learning. And then eventually started posting on Instagram and just like, you know, doing that whole like influencer thing, like whatever. Went back to my job, my healthcare tech job, and I was miserable. I was like, I did not just go through what I went through to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, staring at a computer. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I don't care what I have to do, but it's not this. I loved the company, but I was miserable all of a sudden. And I had no issue with the job before. And so once I had that like wake up call, I was like, okay, I have to find a way to leave this job. There was a bar and restaurant that was opening. It was like a bar / kind of a nightclub. And this is Columbus, Ohio, okay? Like there's not a lot of clubs there, like at all. And it's not like, you know, the nightlife isn't crazy, but this new place was opening. And I was like, well, I could just, you know, host there. And then eventually I think they'll need a marketing person. I can do their social media. Smart. And that can be like my first little job. And so I left my full-time 9-to-5 job, which was like very stable, like had great benefits, all that. And I went to go host at a restaurant. And people were like, you are like, especially in the Midwest, they were like, you just went to 4-year college, you work at a really good company out here, and now you're leaving to go work at like a club, basically.
Right here, it's like kind of normal, but there,
no. And also, like, my reasoning was like, oh, I want to work at this nightclub or whatever hosting so that I could work on social media. And people were like, what the fuck? Like,
did you get nervous?
Not really. Yeah. Like, I was kind of like, it was like a relief to me because I think I was listening to Lauren on the podcast so much where she was talking about how during the day she would work on her side projects, her blog, and then at night she would go work at a restaurant. And I was like, okay, I can do that. So I was going to have my days to myself and then I was going to work at night. And I liked being in environments that were like going out and whatnot. So I was like, I'm working, but I'm having fun. Like, this is perfect. So I did that for a while. But like, yeah, it was like embarrassing at first because I mean, now that I look back, I'm like 25, so young, but I was 25 at the time. And I felt like, okay, 25 years, all my friends are like advancing in their careers. And here I am working at a restaurant. I remember my college ex-boyfriend walked in with his new girlfriend. I had to seat them at a table. And I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. And then now I don't care. But at the time I was like, oh my God, like this is what, like I just remember being so embarrassed. And then 2 weeks in, they needed someone to do their marketing. And so I was like, hey, like, and I showed them my Instagram. They knew I was like on it and stuff. And they're like, oh, perfect. Like you can do like stories and like take pictures and do all that stuff. And so I just did it for them. And like they would have events at night. And so I would be able to like go to the events and like do all the video and photos, like iPhone content for them. And just kind of like grew that way. And I stopped hosting and I just did that. And then from that, I ended up getting like another, I guess you could call like client that I worked with. It was like a nail salon there and I was doing their marketing and then just kind of like started building it that way. And I was starting to grow my own following too. And so slowly I was getting like my first little brand deal, which was like literally probably like $100. And I was like, yes, Beautiful. I'm getting paid. Like, yeah, amazing. And so I just kept like sticking with this. And then eventually I moved to Chicago and I just kept doing the freelance and then my own thing, like kind of like a combination of those two. Eventually moved to LA and I worked at a full-time like job doing social. I was like head of social there. And so I just feel like I was always in that realm of, you know, social media marketing, but also like doing it for myself. And I think now I'm finally at a place where I'm like, okay, it's time to take the leap of like going all in on myself and trusting that versus like constantly like spreading my time with, you know, working on other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it got to a point where I was like, why am I promoting and making videos for other people when I could just do my own and like eventually do my own product or whatever business I want to do and just make those videos for myself. Like, why am I making it for all these other people?
You only have so much energy.
I know.
So it's like
I have to
put it into what you want to do long term. But you needed all this to learn the skills, maybe?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
I definitely feel like it got me to a great place. And now it's like time to just kind of take that little leap of faith of like, okay, what's next? And because I realized during that time, like, it is really hard for me to like work a 9-to-5 for someone else. Like I just feel like I have too much passion for doing my own projects that it's like, okay, I don't think that's going to be what it is for me.
So people like you don't have a 9-to-5 really. And like you have to have a lot of self-discipline, self-timeline, due dates. How do you manage all of that?
Honestly, I think a lot of it goes back to when I had my accident. I remember not having a schedule and being so just like, what am I doing all day? Like I had no wake up time. I had nothing going on all day. And I was just, so then I gave myself structure and I was like, okay, you wake up at this time every morning. Even if you're not going to a job, you still need to like get up and like have your morning routine. And then you're going to block this time for if you're doing PT. And then if you want to like read or do your podcast listening, you have that time. And then if you want to work on your side project, like I just started time blocking within my day during that recovery period. And I feel like that kind of like has instilled in me that like you have to have a structure and like make yourself still work as if you have a 9-to-5, even if it's just yourself. But then like the nice part is you do have that flexibility when you want to go do something or you have like something that you have to get done during the day, you can go do it. So it's like having a little bit of a schedule and then giving yourself the freedom and flexibility of, you know, the perks of working for yourself is being able to do that.
You've been in it for a while. Like what is the, like in a good way, like you built it. Like, do you, ever get nervous about posting or comments or trolls?
Yes, I get so much anxiety about it. I finally had to like hire this guy who just posts certain things, like especially with the podcast account. I'm like, I cannot. I get way too. I'll overthink it. I get too cringed out. And so I just like have him now post everything. I don't even like look at it.
You just like upload it, set it, and you're like, post?
I don't even upload it. I gave him the logins to everything. And I'm like, you can just do whatever you want. Like do whatever you want with it and just like repurpose everything, get all the videos that need to be uploaded. Like I'll send him the videos in like Google Drive or whatever. And then he kind of just goes with it. And we like check in every now and then. And I'll just like keep an eye on it to like make sure that things are fine. And every now and then I'll have to like edit a caption or here and there. But for the most part, I'm just like, I'm letting him run with it right now because I know I can't look at it and like do it. So that was like the first time I've like delegated that task. Cause in my head, I'm like, I don't want to spend money like hiring someone else to do something I can easily do. But I was like, no, you need to like pass that on to someone because you don't want to do it and you are stopping yourself from growing because you are in your head too much about like this video is too cringe. Like I don't want to post this on Instagram. Like I still struggle with that with like my personal account. And so I think now I'm finally going to be like, okay, I need to get out of that mindset for that and just, accepting the cringe and that like you have to do that a little bit to get to where you want to go. But yeah,
I mean, everything is cringe and isn't cringe, you know, whatever. It's just, I don't know. I mean, I do not even pretend to like have that figured out. I mean, I think everything in some ways is like,
it's so cringe, but I'm like,
but like
just what it is.
It is what it is. It's the world we live in. And like, who's going to hold it back? Also, how much like mental space did you clear up when you like let that go on
God, so much.
Like, did you pick up a hobby? Like,
well, I feel like now I can just focus it more on like creating a little bit and not have to worry about like the posting side of things. And so it just has given me a little bit more time to like actually do the part that I like to do. And then I can avoid the part that like holds me back.
Balancing all these plates you have, you know, being healthy, financially stable, personal growth, cooking, and everything between. Like, let me tell you, it's a sauce I cannot figure out. And so I'm just always curious with people who like find such beauty and balance. How do you do it?
It's definitely been like it wasn't like a, one day I just had it. Like it's been a journey to get to this point of being able to find balance. And I still struggle with it still. Like it probably looks a lot nicer on social media than it is day to day. Like I still struggle for sure. This is like maybe a little fucked up to say, but I'm like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You know what I mean? Like just let go of this idea. Like I don't even know if I have tomorrow. So it's like, why am I worrying about something in a week or 2 or a month or whatever that hasn't even happened yet? Like, why am I so focused on this? Of like, just take things day by day sometimes and just like be able to be more present and in the moment has helped me kind of like let go of, being anxious about certain things and being able to actually like live life to the fullest and just saying yes to every opportunity that excites me. I'm someone who like, if I want to go do something, I will just do it. I'll figure out a way. Like sometimes it doesn't always make sense, like timing or money wise, like it's, a little bit chaotic, but I'm like, I'll figure it out. And I have like a little bit of that delusion where I'm like, I will just make it work. And what's the worst that's going to happen?
It's so funny you say that because like digress a little quick. I have this story that a director told me and I'll never forget it. And I say it to myself a lot. He was telling me a story, or he was telling a group. It wasn't just me. I wish it was just me, but it wasn't. He was telling this group this story, and he was like, yeah, I had gone to shoot. It was a very successful show. And, I had a shit day on set. There was an actress who was having a really tough day, and I had to like kind of like force her into doing the scene, which was like not great. And I felt horrible about it. And it was just a shit day. And he was like, and I had something in my life that I love so much, which was to come home and stare at my 2 goldfish in their cage. Or their cage, what is that? Tank.
The tank bowl, yeah.
And, he came home and he's sitting on the couch and he's staring at it. And he's like, why the fuck is there only 1 goldfish? The other goldfish had eaten the other goldfish.
Oh my
So it's like, what's the worst that can happen is you could get eaten by another goldfish. Like, and he was like, yeah, it was a shit day, but I didn't get eaten by another goldfish.
Like
that's the worst that can happen.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, our circle is only as big as we make it.
Yeah. And it's whatever that shit that does happen, like, for the most part, we'll be able to manage. You know what I mean? Like, you might struggle for a little bit and you might have, like, your down moments, but, like, you just have to have enough confidence in yourself that you'll be able to pull yourself out of it. So that was, like, the thing. It's just, like, being, like, I was watching this one video talking about optimism because I'm like, I'm an optimistic person, but I also don't feel like I'm necessarily always like the most like positive and cheery all the time. But I realized like through that video, they were talking about how optimism really just comes down to being resilient and being able to know that like whatever's happening, like you'll make it through. And so I think that was like for me, like, oh, okay, like I am really optimistic because I just know that I'll make it through out of this. Like,
yeah, you have high resilience.
Yeah. I feel like for me also, it's like, okay, what I went through, I'm like, if I could make it through that, there's not much that like, can't get through much else.
Nothing's holding you back, in my opinion.
Right. So I think that experience obviously has shaped a lot of the way that I look at life now and has just made me appreciate things and have that perspective of like, why not just go do as much as you can while you can, because you just never know what's going to happen or when you might lose those abilities. And so I think it's just, I don't know, being very grateful for everything that I have now and just, enjoying it while I can.
Absolutely. You are such a resource of knowledge and experience. Like,
God.
Can you
That's
please...
so nice of you.
Oh my gosh, no, seriously, I can listen to you all day. Can
you
please tell everybody else where they can listen to you all day?
Yes.
Where to find you and all the good things.
Yes. Okay, so my Instagram is at Neeloo Fathi, NeeLooFathi, and then my podcast is Order and Chaos, and then I have a TikTok account. It's under my, like, I don't know why I have it under this name. It's like my alter ego name, Looney, because it's my name like split up, but it's at Looney _ LOONEE_.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for
Thank you so much for having me. You're the best. Oh my gosh. Yay!
Thank you so much for listening to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the show. As always, we'll see you next Tuesday.